A new study has warned that rising global temperatures could render large swaths of the Middle East and North Africa too hot for humans. Experts say the future of humanity in these areas is in jeopardy and say it could affect up to 500 million people. Researchers found the number of extremely hot days in the region has doubled since 1970. In future, the climate in large parts of the Middle East and North Africa could change in such a manner that the very existence of its inhabitants is in jeopardy, says Jose Lelyveld, director at the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry and professor at the Cyprus Institute. Lelyveld and his team concluded that if Earth's temperature were to increase on average only by 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial times, the temperature in summer in these regions will increase more than twofold. By mid-century, during the warmest periods, temperatures will not fall below 30 degrees at night, and during daytime they could rise to 46 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Midday temperatures on hot days could even climb to 50 degrees Celsius. Another finding, heat waves could occur 10 times more often than they do now. By mid-century, 80 instead of 16 extremely hot days. In addition, the duration of heat waves in North Africa and the Middle East will prolong dramatically. Between 1986 and 2005, it was very hot for an average period of about 16 days. By mid-century it will be unusually hot for 80 days per year. At the end of the century, up to 118 days could be unusually hot, even if greenhouse gas emissions decline again after 2040. If mankind continues to release carbon dioxide as it does now, people living in the Middle East and North Africa will have to expect about 200 unusually hot days, according to the model projections, says Panos Hadjinikolaou, associate professor at the Cyprus Institute and climate change expert. Atmospheric researcher Jose Lelyveld is convinced that climate change will have a major impact on the environment and the health of people in these regions. Climate change will significantly worsen the living conditions in the Middle East and in North Africa. Prolonged heat waves and desert dust storms can render some regions uninhabitable, which will surely contribute to the pressure to migrate, said Jose Lelyveld. The research team recently also published findings on the increase of fine particulate air pollution in the Middle East. It was found that desert dust in the atmosphere over Saudi Arabia, Iraq and in Syria has increased by up to 70% since the beginning of this century. This is mainly attributable to an increase of sandstorms as a result of prolonged droughts. It is expected that climate change will contribute to further increases, which will worsen environmental conditions in the area. In the now published study, Lelyveld and his colleagues first compared climate data from 1986 to 2005 with predictions from 26 climate models over the same time period. It was shown that the measurement data and model predictions corresponded extremely well, which is why the scientists use these models to project climate conditions for the period from 2046 to 2065 and the period from 2081 to 2100. The researchers based their calculations on two future scenarios. The first scenario, called RCP 4.5, assumes that the global emissions of greenhouse gases will start decreasing by 2040 and that the Earth will be subjected to warming by 4.5 watt per square meter by the end of the century. The RCP 4.5 scenario roughly corresponds to the target set at the most recent UN Climate Summit, which means that global warming should be limited to less than 2 degrees Celsius. The second scenario is based on the assumption that greenhouse gases will continue to increase without further limitations. It is therefore called the business-as-usual scenario. According to this scenario, the mean surface temperature of the Earth will increase by more than 4 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial times. In both scenarios, the strongest rise in temperature in the Middle East and North Africa is expected during summer, when it is already very hot, and not during winter, which is more common in other parts of the globe.